Hello, friends. This is my favorite part of the start of a meeting, as each square on the screen turns into someone's face. And there are a lot of you here tonight, so I'm really excited that you're here. We have a really cool event, some wonderful people, some from within our YU family, some from outside our YU family. And the reason we're having this event tonight, this is just not your learn about consulting event. We've had multiple firms come on campus to talk to students about consulting. But something always happens. There's always a disconnect. We always have 80 students interested, then it drops to 50, then it drops to 20, then it drops to 10. And then all of a sudden, at the end of a recruiting cycle, we don't have anyone recruiting for consulting anymore. So tonight is really to talk about like what happens, what are the myths? What is it really like? There might be some things that you're thinking that aren't even, relevant in today's market, today's virtual market. So we have a lovely, lovely group of people tonight. I'm gonna say each person's name. I'm not gonna tell you to introduce yourself yet, but when I call out your name, just kind of wave your hand, say hi. We have Dan Eckstein. Yay, Dan! SciSim School of Business 06. We have Ari Ashkenas. Where are you, Ari? Hi, Ari. We have Teresa Bayewitz, Stern College for Women 06. Amazing. We have Namaan Mian. Where are you, Namaan? Great. And we have Joe Croft, YC 2000. So now I'm going to go around. I want each one of you to say where you work, what you do, brief introduction. And then the last thing I want you to say is either yes or no. Did you know you wanted to go into consulting when you started college? All right. So why don't we start with you, Dan?
Sure. So my name is Dan Eckstein. Also, some people know me as Donnie. First, quick intro. So I work at ServiceNow. I am 6 weeks in. I just left Accenture, where I was in the consulting practice there and doing sales and account management for both media technology and financial services companies. I would say, well, first off, thank you for having me, and I'm sure the rest of the panelists will agree. This is a great session to have, and I think we're just lucky that we have a great career center department led by Susan and Todd, who literally Todd has been sort of to the hip with me while I was at Accenture, and the success that we've had bringing YU people into Accenture over the last 2 years really has been because of the partnership that we've built between Accenture and the YU community, and it's been great to have that. Also, shout out to Shmuel Adler, who I worked very closely with for the consulting group, and also a class that I was trying to pitch at YU. So I would just give a sense in terms of my background related to consulting. So I actually started out of YU, out of SciSims, majored in finance, and actually got a job in consulting at this company called Bearing Point, which is no longer here. They went bankrupt. They used to be KPMG Consulting, and then they spun into Bearing Point and then went bankrupt. But to me, the answer to that question is yes. Like, I did come into my career at out of YU knowing that I wanted to go into consulting. I did have other opportunities that I was pursuing coming from a finance degree, but going into consulting was definitely a key focus for mine. So being able to see that happen coming from YU, where I didn't actually think that it was going to happen. It was something that I was very happy to see. And that really, I think, changed my career in terms of my career path, working at companies like AllianceBernstein, Hewlett-Packard, Accenture, and now at ServiceNow. And my role here at ServiceNow is the alliance lead for Accenture. So my job is to make sure that Accenture is influencing as much business for ServiceNow. They are an implementer of ServiceNow, which is a software technology company. And my goal is to make sure that Accenture is top of mind for all of the ServiceNow people, and that ServiceNow is top of mind for all the Accenture people. So I'm excited to have this role.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Dan, and congrats on the new role.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Teresa, how about you?
Hey, hi everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you all tonight. So I'm going to first answer Susan's question, which was, did I know I wanted to pursue consulting when I started college? The answer is definitely not. So I think this is terrific. It is a great opportunity for all the students that, to get to hear from us, the things that we didn't even know to dream about or imagine when we were in your shoes. So I was a math major at Stern. There were 2 other students in the math department at the time and 1 professor who's probably still there teaching every math class. And I thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought I would teach math and Chumash and bartend on the side. I did none of those things, but I did end up sitting for actuarial exams. I started my career as a pension actuary at a small consulting firm called Buck Consultants. I struggled with the actuarial exam, so I fairly early on, switched paths from advising clients about their pension liabilities, which you need an actuary for, to advising clients about their compensation for employees, for which you need no credentials other than good quantitative skills and some creativity. And I've had the benefit of learning from many wonderful mentors along the way. I joined Mercer in 2010. I actually followed another YU alumnus over to Mercer, and I've never looked back. So I'm now a partner in Mercer's career business. My area of expertise is advising clients, mostly corporate boards, about executive compensation and other related HR issues.
Thank you. And, I'd like to point out you were mathematics, right? So
Yep.
you were a mathematics major. Dan was a finance major. Okay, what about you, Ari?
So first off, Susan and Todd, thank you so much. I know I've enjoyed my conversations with both of you leading up to tonight. So thank you so much for putting this together. It's a very unique type of event coming into academia. I would say back when I was in university, we didn't have events like these. So I think it's amazing that you guys are putting these meetings together like this and giving your students a real education in what it's like to be in the consulting world. So thank you. So when I graduated from graduate school, I actually started my career similar to Donnie in consulting at a firm called Towers Watson. They've gone through different iterations through the years. And when I started, we were starting to do these big technology HR implementations, and the big hot buzzword was Workday. A lot of people have heard of Workday now because it's a massive, amazing company that does a lot of good work. But about 10 plus years ago, it was just hot on the scene, and just starting to get into big corporations. And really from there, I went from a large firm to a smaller firm called Strativity Group, which is a boutique firm in Hackensack, New Jersey, led by my friend and mentor, Lior Arusi. Strativity Group was really a firm that focused on customer experience and employee experience transformation. So if you think of some of the biggest companies in the world, such as Mercedes-Benz, Cadillac, BMW, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, Johnson & Johnson, we helped a lot of those companies transform their organizations into a customer-centric and an employee-centric organization, which you don't hear very often because there aren't so many firms out there who are doing that type of work. But it's an amazing opportunity, especially, and we'll probably touch upon this, later on in the evening. But there are a couple of differences between going from a larger firm to a smaller firm. A larger firm, Teresa and Joe could probably attest, you might be exposed to 1 or 2 clients per year. But if you're going to a boutique firm with 30 consultants, you're going to be exposed to 5, 6, 7 clients throughout the year and exposed to the C-suite and and many other senior leaders throughout the organization. So I did not know I was going to go into consulting straight out of university. Consulting is actually in my blood and my family. But so I'm very thankful that I actually did, and I've had some great mentors along the way from Jeff Cohen and Carol Cohen, who are really my people that I learn from on a daily basis. So it's extremely important to start to make connections and create those connections and mentors along the way as you go on, and start to think about a career in consulting if that's the path you want to go down. Susan, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I wanted to thank you for introducing yourself. Thank you for joining us tonight. And you are a psychology major, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Okay. Now we're going to go to someone who isn't actually a consultant, but works with thousands of college students to help them break into consulting. So Namaan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's absolutely right. Well, thanks, Susan and Todd, for having me. Hey, everybody. I'm excited to be with you tonight. My name is Namaan. I'm the COO of Management Consulted. We're the world's largest website and resource for folks who are looking to break into consulting. So if you're looking for jobs or prep or just insight into the industry, 4 million folks a year come to us for that. And alongside with that, we work with 70 plus partner universities all around the world to help their students break into consulting as well. And those students end up landing offers in 170 different firms. So whether you have questions about boutique firms or a specific practice area or niche, or you're looking to compare firms, I may have some insight that I can share with you, or if you're just looking for some insight into the consulting landscape as a whole. My background is very unique. I started my career on Capitol Hill in strategic communication. I moved over to the nonprofit world, did development for an international nonprofit before coming and taking over the business side of Management Consulted. And the answer to your question, Susan, is no. Even though I'm not a consultant today, I didn't even know the consulting world existed when I was in college. And now I find myself just a few short years later, right, in the space and in the world. And so, you never know where life is going to take you. I thought I was going to, stay in DC and save the world. And it turns out that, business is one of the most creative endeavors on the planet, and is what I found to be one of the biggest ways that I can make an impact. And so just really honored to be here and excited to connect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A few things came up during your introductions about larger firms, boutique firms, whether you start in the boutique, move to the larger, whether you start with the larger, move into corporate. They're all different paths that you can take. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then right after that, we're going to talk about how you end up in your practice. You can see that it's very major agnostic, that we have people from liberal arts, from the humanities, from business. And, do you enter in right after college saying, I want to work in human capital management? Or do you end up there? Do you start out as a generalist and then you gravitate towards an area of interest? Does the firm tell you what practice you're going to work within? So I really want to tap into our consultants for that too. So let's start, what do you think the benefits are of starting in the boutique? Because similar to accounting, there's the big four, right? And everyone's focused on the big four, but not everybody gets in, and there are so many other mid-sized firms that are amazing, where you really get a lot of hands-on experience, you have a better work-life balance. So I want to know what your thoughts are as far as, like similar to starting at Deloitte, you start somewhere big and then you leave and go start, your own CPA practice. Do you have to start big for consulting, or can you start small and have it be just as rewarding and have there be many more companies to apply to? Who wants to take that first?
I could go, Susan. So
wait. Let's back up a minute. Joe, oh my gosh, Joe's like the first person I talked to about putting this panel together. You're the one that got me all excited. Joe is a physics major, Yeshiva College. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And first, a shout out to Naomi. It's like incredible. I don't think we've talked in 20 plus years since I landed at Mercer with her help. So a very belated thank you. And was certainly a very helpful resource as I explored what I wanted to do. When I joined YU, I knew what I wanted to do. I was going to be an engineer. I'm not an engineer. And then after about a year, I figured out I don't want to be an engineer. I'm going to go pre-med. And I'm not a doctor. I interned at Mercer in our health business. I fell in love, and 20 plus years later, here I am. So I graduated with a physics major, a math minor. We'll talk later, I believe, about the importance of internships at many of the companies we're considering. If you don't have a credible internship, you may as well just not apply. It's perhaps equally as important as having a bachelor's. So internships are very important. An additional benefit of internships, besides having a critical element on your resume, is it helps you figure out what you want to do. So when I interned in the health business at Mercer, that's where I kind of realized this is right for me in a lot of different ways. So very quickly, so what do I do in the health practice at Mercer? Most large companies spend millions of dollars on health insurance. Some of our larger clients spend over $1 billion a year on health insurance, $10,000 to $20,000 per employee. It's right up there, right after salary is health insurance. And there are a lot of things, a lot of levers companies have to pull to help bring that cost down. It's a very big ticket item. Obviously gets a lot of C-suite and board attention. And so we help companies project what are they going to spend? How could they spend less? And more often the focus is shifting towards how can we improve health outcomes? So if I have an employee workforce that because of COVID, they're all disengaged and, depressed in whatever term that means, or they're not bringing their best to work, I'm not going to have a successful business. What can I do to improve mental health? What can I do to improve health outcomes? Most companies view that as their moral responsibility, and also it often has business implications. Susan, you're on mute.
I'll keep a rubber band on my wrist. I'm going to start the first question with you, and I'm going to move ahead to that second part about the practice area. You said you knew you wanted to be in health, and that's where you are.
Sure. So I did have, I had the privilege. I actually had 3 related internships in consulting through YU. Now that's while I was in YU, I realized it's a bit unusual. I spent the summer doing working in the team that Teresa's in now, a summer in healthcare and a summer in retirement consulting. And it was clear to me that they're all very different and they'd all resonate with different personalities, different experiences. And what I personally liked about healthcare is I was at the time thinking of becoming an actuary, ultimately did go through the exams. And there are many in the health space that do go through the actuarial exams. It was also, and to this day, it's highly creative. So I didn't want to be in an environment where the task at hand, the way to become an expert was to become an expert in the textbooks. There's some fields where an expert means there's a lot of facts and a lot of methodologies. And if you can master it, you've become the expert. Whereas in health, a lot of it was fast moving, creative. You kind of know what you're trying to solve for. You kind of know what data you might be able to get at, but no one's going to tell you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get to the answer. And that sort of freedom and creativity resonated with me.
All right. Yeah, Teresa, how about you? I mean, how did you know you wanted to be in your practice from the onset? Your colleagues at Mercer, do you feel that they all had a passion for a certain area and that's where they are?
So I was a lost soul, and I thought I was going to be an actuary. So I started out actually in the retirement practice, and I, similar to Joe, actually found the work to be dreadfully boring and not creative. It's very, anything about pensions in the United States is heavily driven by regulation. Mm-hmm. So like it does at a certain point, you do get to be creative, like when you've been an actuary for 30 years and clients ask you to cook up something fresh. But for like the early years, it's just a lot of methodology driven modeling and data scrubbing, which, is a worthy endeavor because you build a lot of really good transferable skills around attention to detail and Excel modeling and stuff like that. But it wasn't a fit for me. So I ended up actually switching to the compensation practice really by accident, because they needed an extra pair of hands. People had just left. I was available. I had capacity. I needed to hit my billable hours quota. So I like volunteered, and I just really found a mentor who I really owe my career to today. But the nice thing about the career business at Mercer specifically is it's really the miscellaneous line of business. So like my main focus is executive compensation, but like my clients are in the boardroom. My clients are the CEOs and the CFOs and the CHROs and the board. And so I'm engaging with clients and helping troubleshoot and guide them and introducing them to the right experts on all aspects of the HR agenda, spanning from the healthcare stuff all the way over to like the technology implementations. I'm not an expert in everything. I'm an expert in what I'm an expert in, but I do get to touch a lot of different things. And that's actually something that is attractive to candidates who are applying for internships in my line of business, that we are, we have depth, but we also, I think, have a lot of breadth. And so you do get to try a lot of different things, and you don't need to quote unquote choose your major until you've been with us for a couple of years and try different things.
That's good to know. So you don't have to declare by the end of your first semester. Namaan, let me ask you a question. You work with a lot of college students. Do you feel that they know what practice area they want? Is it wrong for them to think that if they do? Is it like the 14-year-old that says, I'm going to be an investment banker? Or do you find that students are just open? They just want to get into consulting in general, because a lot of students are like, well, what am I going to do? Can I pick what I do? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I do get emails from 14-year-olds asking how they can become consultants. And my answer is just go enjoy your childhood. But there's time for that later. No, you don't need to pick a practice area going in or have a practice area chosen for you. One of the reasons that students and our clients go into consulting is because they want to keep their options open long term, right? Like consulting is the ultimate kind of playground for you to build your skills, your transferable skills, like Teresa said, to gain industry exposure, to gain exposure to senior stakeholders. And right, if you have, professional ADD, if you're not exactly sure what you want to do yet, right, you can break in as a generalist, get exposure, and then decide later what you want to do, whether that's inside of consulting or out. And so unless you have a real passion for a particular practice area and you want to be branded as the healthcare person or the technology person, and that's what you want to do with your career, great. Go ahead and break into a practice area. But if you're not quite sure that that's what you want your career to focus on, my advice is always try and break in as a generalist and make that decision later.
Okay, thank you. Great advice. Dan, I'm going to ask you for a second what your thoughts are on starting out at the large firm or starting out at the boutique firm.
Yeah, no, I think my perspective, like Bearing Point at the time, was I would consider them a big firm, right? It wasn't, it wasn't a more boutique. It was because there's a lot of places to go, So I'm coming from a perspective where, while I think there's a lot of great opportunities in boutique firms to be able to be a specialist in a specific area, I prefer being a generalist, and I think that also becomes your personality, right? I like knowing a lot of things. And being, and seeing a lot of things and having a lot of different experiences. And I think, when I think about the boutique firms, I think about someone who wants to have, let's say, their foot in the door, is struggling. And especially now, I could tell you, getting into the bigger firms is going to be something that you really need to have your eye on from the second you really graduate high school, in a way. So many times, like the people that you're up against, you're graduating high school and they have relationships. They've already have, opportunities that are lined up in their summer internships that are geared towards things that make them stand out from a consulting perspective. So being able to, find your way in some of these big firms, it's a challenge. And unless you have the grit and the hustle that that you're going to use that as your goalpost, I think you have to figure out for yourself, are there opportunities that are still just as rewarding in a boutique firm? And I think there are. So for me personally, like I think it's when I speak to my dad, and he was in trading back in the day, and he always says to me like, hey, if I was trying to get into that trading firm, I wouldn't be able to do it now. And then we say that to our kids, like, oh, if we had to get into this school, we wouldn't be able to do that now. Things have gotten harder and harder, right? There's a lot of competition, and you just need to be having a mindset that you might not succeed. And it's not to say that you will even succeed in a boutique firm, because these boutique firms are also sometimes just as competitive. But I think in these boutique firms, it's easier to build that personal relationship often with someone who sees the potential that you have, versus a company like Accenture, where you're one of, at a 550,000 person company, you're one of thousands that are applying. You need to be able to really figure out who is your sponsor, who is looking out for you, who is going to bring you along on that journey. Versus in the boutique firms, where you're able to potentially find that sponsor much quicker. And the quicker you're able to have someone that actually believes in you, that sees your potential, to me, that's the type of person that you want to be working for. So, I think whichever one you choose is looking for that person who is going to take a vested interest in you, because once you join any company, really, you could get lost very easily. So being able to find that person is going to help you on your path to success.
Dan, I just want to touch upon one thing that you said. To really get your foot in that door, to have a few internships that are these shining star internships that build those transferable skills that are going to stick out in a consulting interview. Can you give some suggestions?
Anything, not like, as much as I would suggest working in, it's rewarding, right? Like it's something like it's a struggle for me personally, right? Like if I think about life, right? And not to get all deep on us here, but like, what is it that we want to do in our lives? We want to do things that are meaningful and rewarding. And like, you do things like HASK or doing other things like that, which are super meaningful to the soul. But like, how do you spin that against someone who went to work at Goldman Sachs, or someone that went to work at a competitor? So if I had to give you a business answer, it would be, if you want to get a job at Accenture, go get an internship at McKinsey, right? If you get an internship at McKinsey, then Accenture is going to say, we want to hire you. So the easiest way to figure out if you want to get into it is work for one of their competitors. There's nothing that they want more than if you got an internship at EY to come to Accenture. But at the same time, you have to figure out for yourselves, what is it that you find rewarding? And if you're going to take a path of going to do something that's personally rewarding, I would say is finding what is the split that you want to make for yourself, because no one really asks you, what is it that you did that summer? Oh, I spent 6 weeks at Camp HASK, but then I spent 4 weeks working in a boot camp, and I did XYZ project, and I brought revenue to the company. And out of that, what I did was XYZ. So you talk about the output that you had of that internship. No one really cares about the HASK part, although it is important to still bring up, because it talks about who you are as a person. But to me, it's the story that you share over that is important. And it's how do you spin your experience in a way that gets the other person across the table from you excited that you're doing something different, and you sell it, that you're having an impact on a company, you're having impact on a client. That's to me is the more important thing as it relates to that.
Thank you. One more question in this set, and I'm gonna, ask Ari. Then we're going to move into the getting your foot in the door. Is it 6 degrees of separation? What is the networking game? What does it mean to just apply on a website? We're going to touch upon the hot topic of travel in consulting, and can you have work-life balance? But I want to wrap up this set with Ari and just ask you your feelings on the boutique versus the larger, and the experiences that you had at each, which one you preferred, which one you would recommend to someone starting out.
Yeah, so just to talk to Donnie's comments before, maybe it's different now than it was 10, 12 years ago. I actually worked at HASK for 2 summers. I met my wife there. And I had no problem getting jobs within consulting. So there is a balance, and you have to strike that balance. And again, to Donnie's point, you have to tell the story about who you are and what you believe in, and what kind of impact you want to be making on this world. In terms of the boutique versus the larger firm, so I think there are definitely benefits to both. Larger firms, I would, before you go to a boutique, I would say it's probably pretty important to get some big firm experience if you have the opportunity to, because to a certain extent, the larger firms, such as the Accentures, the EYs, or the Mercers, give you that training, whether it's the hard skills or the soft skills in consulting, that you're going to be expected to hit the ground running in a boutique, and they're not going to necessarily have the training dollars or things like that to get you going. I would definitely say I prefer the smaller environment, because you get to build out those relationships really deeply, and find mentors and friends. I was just on the phone earlier tonight with a previous manager of mine who I'm still very close with, and we talk all the time. So you also get exposed to so much more than you might at a larger firm in a quicker amount of time.
Mhm.
As I mentioned before, in a boutique firm, you're going to be exposed maybe to 5 to 10 clients a year, and you're going to be right in the C-suite, facilitating workshops. You're going to be learning and expected to be facilitating focus groups and surveys and different types of things that you might not have the opportunity to so quickly at a larger firm.
Mhm.
So there's definitely differences, but again, I think it's okay to go to HASC, by the way.
Thank you for your answer. We're going to segue now into the networking game, as Donnie called it earlier, and how, especially in this virtual arena that we find ourselves in, everyone's playing the networking game. Everyone's spending hours on their LinkedIn profile, using social media. We're not going out and shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and having that elevator pitch. It's all happening from our sofa. So, in this networking game, it's challenging. It's tough to get something. And then, Joe, you said earlier that these are golden opportunities, and regardless of how you get it, take it, cherish it. So I'm going to start with Namaan. With the students that you're working with, are you finding that this COVID environment is opening up more doors, the same doors? Is it just a different perspective? Are students getting in through the 6 degrees of separation? Now, keep in mind, we have a very unique university because we have an incredibly tight and successful alumni community, right? And, I'm sure that Donnie will talk about that in a bit. But what are you finding out there? There's a lot of diversity initiatives. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start at the 30,000 foot level, and we'll come down. So overall in the industry, what we've seen over, across the 200 firms that we have relationships with, is that full-time hiring did take a hit last year. But what firms did not do is cut back on internship hiring, right? They are taking a long-term view of this, and they understand that they have to continue to invest in their talent pipeline. And so short-term full-time hiring took a hit, internship hiring did not. And so students have the same opportunities for internships that they had the year before, if not more. And what we have seen, throughout this COVID situation is that, right, the kind of recruiting and hiring process has been democratized. And what I mean by that is, and folks, my colleagues on the panel can speak to this from their own firm's perspective and experience as well. What we're seeing across the board is that firms are more and more open to students from different types of backgrounds. I know you've mentioned major a lot, but like the target versus non-target conversation, that while it still matters, it matters less than it ever has before. And one of the things that this virtual environment has done is that it has made firms' recruiting efforts eminently more scalable. So one of the reasons that you have target schools is it's the 80-20 rule, right? Like I know that I can go to 20% of schools and find 80% of the talent that I need. Well, now, right, okay, that still might be true, but it's a lot easier lift for me as a consultant or a recruiter to jump on a Zoom call with someone who's from outside of the target schools that I cover, right? Recruiting is still a part of my job, but now all of a sudden it's a lot easier for me because I'm not on the road, I'm not doing in-person events, for me to connect with someone who writes me a really great email and gets in my inbox. And so we can talk about networking tactics potentially later, but if I can get in front of someone, I can get their attention, I can have a conversation with them, and I can, build that sponsorship that some of my colleagues on the panel have talked about. So just to kind of sum that up, the opportunities are either the same or only growing for students to break into consulting. So I would not be worried about market effects. The beauty of consulting is in boom times, companies need consultants. And in bust times, companies need consultants just for different reasons. And so we're seeing the industry continue to grow at a really robust pace. The second part of your question was about, okay, do you still need the 6 degrees of separation? And how do students really navigate this process? I'll just quickly say, if you've got the luxury of a tight-knit and successful alumni network, you should absolutely take advantage of it. It is like one of the main weapons in your arsenal. So take advantage 100%, reach out to anybody who's got any kind of connection to YU, right? They are predisposed to want to help you. Outside of that, even if you, right, for whatever reason, right, you can't find someone who's got a YU connection that is at a practice area or firm that you want to go to. No big deal. Cold networking is a main kind of part of the game, and it's just you have to play that part of the game too if you want to be successful. And one of the things to keep in mind is, number one, everybody else is doing it. Number two, right, the people you're reaching out to, recruiting is a part of their job description, right? They are looking for top talent no matter where you're coming from. And number three, ultimately it's your responsibility to open the door for yourself. And so if you really want this, you have to go and get it. But the opportunities are there. And we can talk about kind of tactics for cold networking or what have you later on this evening. But kind of my charge to everyone here would be is if you want to break into consulting, the opportunities are there. Just go find an advocate. Because like Dan mentioned earlier, it's incredibly difficult to break in just by blindly applying online. You need to have someone who's shepherding your application through the process.
Donnie, over to you for a second. Okay, my mute's off. Correct me if I'm wrong, were you involved in the Summer of Opportunity, the consulting force?
Yeah, I worked on that with the dean.
Dean Wasserman, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how many of you took part in this last year or if you've heard about it from your friends. For our panelists tonight who don't know what I'm talking about, last summer, as an immediate response to COVID-19, administrators, faculty, alumni, trusted partners in the nonprofit world, startups in Israel, everyone stepped up to offer opportunities for our students. And Dean Wasserman started this course called the Consulting Force. And the first 2 weeks of it were training. Johnny, you might be able to talk a little bit about it. I don't need you to do like a marketing piece for the course, but when you were talking about those internships that mean something when you're going into that consulting interview, should a student not be able to find an internship for this summer in an area that would open the door for a consulting interview? Do you think that the consulting force might be a good idea for them for this summer?
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. And when Dean Wasserman reached out to me, and he was coming up with the challenge of that we have so many people who are their internships are getting canceled or they're struggling to get internships. We came up with this idea where Accenture was providing our subject matter experts to help train a lot of the YU students through this internship program. And I thought it was, we even brought in case studies, and it was a competition, and it was a great training 3 weeks that we had in the beginning of the summer. And then the students went and they had time to be able to give back to communities. And this goes back to sort of where I was talking about beforehand, where I think when you look at those types of opportunities, like it's all about, again, how you spin it. So those are like working on the consulting force and having an impact during COVID on your local community and figuring out how do we tap into our needs by getting training from Yeshiva University in order to be able to make an impact on those local organizations, and then talking about the impact that you had during that summer and what you did that made you differentiated and had you stick out from other people. That's exactly a story that you could tell that anyone would be just as impressed about, whether you work there. And to me, if someone told me a story about how they totally changed an organization's culture, or how they redid their whole booking system to do something differently, versus a student who maybe was at EY who is doing some data entry, right? To me, it's about the story, and the story that I think you could pull with one of those types of opportunities with this YU program is just so impactful. But I do want to also talk about that last question that you mentioned about the networking. And when I've asked some of the new hires from Accenture, how did you get the job, right? A lot of the people, one person said to me like, oh, I looked up online and I found the email address for the head of HR at Accenture. Head of HR for 550,000 people, Ellen Shook. She's an amazing person. But they emailed her. She emailed their resume to someone in recruiting. They got an interview. So like, to me, there's stories like that where people are bold and come up with some clever way, like Namaan could probably share, of getting creative, of getting your resume into the process, into the pool, not being just another resume, but making it being stand out. And I think there are people like that. And the second thing that I always tell people when they reach out to me just to connect, I say, just hang up the phone and call someone else that makes a difference for networking from that perspective. If you want to call me, it's because you have an opportunity that you think I can help influence for you. So if there's an opportunity at ServiceNow, I would say, okay, how you're calling me to network, not to just get some general career advice on consulting, because honestly, like, you should figure that out on your own. You should talk to people, speak to other, coworkers, other friends, people that you know personally, knowing that you want to go into consulting. You should be calling me because you think that I could be your ticket to be getting into ServiceNow. And I could help get you into that process, but you need to know already that you want to do that. And that's my perspective, that when you have that focus on the company that you want to work for, you go your hardest at figuring that out, and then lay out an agenda. Tell the person, this is the topics that I wanted to talk to you about. Not just to give me some random questions that you think about while we're talking. Send me the list of questions even beforehand. Tell me, these are the topics that I want to discuss with you. Which ones do you think are most important? This is the opportunity number the job that I'm applying to. Do you know anyone there? Because maybe I don't, and not to say that it's not worth your time or my time, but you might be able to have your time focused elsewhere as well. So, that would be my recommendation for you as you network, is not to just look at some of those random, let me just connect with people, because those are good, those are good things as you try and practice. But I would say really focus that on the people that make a difference. And there's also organizations, companies called like Lunch Club, I think it's called, where you could just go and meet people, right? I would recommend that, right? Don't talk to me if you haven't spoken to a random stranger and giving your pitch. You shouldn't be giving your pitch your first time to me. Go on Lunch Club and have some dates with people, and just talk to them, right? Before, when I was interviewing for this job at ServiceNow, I just went and I was like, it's been 5 years since I interviewed for a job. I went on the Lunch Club and I just went and I met people and I tried giving my pitch on how I wanted to differentiate myself, right? And people were willing to listen and I listened to them. So that would be my suggestion to you as you think about that as well.
Amazing. So thank you for telling us a little bit about the consulting force. I'm working with Dean Wasserman on that, and we'll know very soon if we're bringing that back this summer, and you'll receive information on that. As far as pitching and having that practice of having the conversations, join YU MVP, the Yeshiva University Mentoring Volunteer Program, because in YU MVP, there's a menu of options of the type of mentorship that you can seek. And one of them is, doing a mock interview, practicing your pitch. So connect with some people that work in different areas of industry and just practice and get feedback from different perspectives. And thank you for the networking advice. Both of you very valuable. All right, the next question is going to be for Ari and Teresa and Joe. What is life like? Like, are you working 80 hours a week? Are you traveling all of the time? Does every single firm have the same expectation for travel? Can you have a kid? You know, can you have pets? Can you have a life? Or is it all part of it? Does it just all work? Teresa, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. So the answer to like almost everything you just asked is no. No, I do not routinely work 80 hours a week. It has definitely happened on occasion. Those are terrible weeks. They happen sometimes. They're not sustainable. Nobody can live like that all the time. The end. Yes, you can have kids. I have 3. They're terrific. And you should never, never limit your career because of children you might have someday. You're at a point where the world is your oyster. Opportunities lie before you. The worst thing you can do to yourself is limit yourself. And it's a great time to be a working mom. It's never been better. There is so much flexibility, even more so now because of COVID. Like, you know, in one of my earlier jobs, when I was very early in my career and I had my first child, I did ask if I could work from home on Fridays. And I was told no, because I was too junior to like really be master of my own work. Like I was getting instructions from other people. And I switched careers. I mean, that was like a big driving force because I needed that flexibility. And I didn't agree that I couldn't be the master of my own domain. That's part of what we love about consulting is you kind of can be the master of your own domain. As far as travel, you know, before COVID, I probably got on a plane like, I don't know, 6-7 times a year. But it was just for a meeting here, a meeting there. Like, I mean, I definitely miss my visits to my client in Bermuda, you know, my client in Zurich. Like I got to go to some really nice places, but it was never, at least in the HR consulting world, we don't do the fly out Monday morning and fly home Thursday night or Friday afternoon. Most of our work is collaborative and done with our teams in our office or in our virtual office. And we meet with clients periodically to present findings, to do interviews, to give updates, but we don't do our work on site at clients. It's not our business model. We're not fully dedicated to a single account. We're working on 6, 7, 8, 9 live engagements at the same time. So that's a great transferable skill for life also, just being able to prioritize and manage your time effectively. So I have long maintained that consulting is like the best kept secret for working moms. I think it provides a wealth of opportunity for interesting and meaningful work that's challenging, but within a flexible, you know, with flexibility to do other things in your life.
Thank you. I'm going to pivot over to Joe because you're both at Mercer. So what's life like for you, Joe?
It's a roller coaster. So similar to Teresa, I don't travel a lot, you know, 6-7 times a year. We have offices in every major city. I guess that's a perk of working for a large firm. So if there's a client in Dallas, they're more likely to work with our Dallas office. We don't need to go there unless we have a specific expertise. So a lot of the meetings are internal or for a client that might be multi-site. But the hours are a bit unpredictable. So I don't, when I walk into the office or figuratively walk into the office at 9, I don't know if I'll be able to log off at 5 or 6 or 7. I may get a call from a head of HR or from one of Ari's peers, I suppose, or a CFO or a CEO, and they need something and they don't care that I'm working with 4 other clients. They need the answer and they need it for the board or they need it for whomever immediately. So there is a bit of unpredictability. You can have busy times. You could have, let's say, 5 clients in our model at Mercer. We don't do single client staffing as opposed to other consulting firms where you might have one big project for 6 weeks and then you move on. We might have clients, 5, 6, 7 clients that we stick with for years. And if they all need something the same Tuesday, there's only so much latitude to say, can I get it to you Thursday? So there will be peaks and valleys. advice I give myself and I give others is sometimes it gets to be pretty stinky. And it's like, okay, but let me wait a week. And then normally it calms down. So in the balance, as Teresa said, it's flexible, it's manageable. But the nature of the business is that it can be at times unpredictable.
Okay, I'm gonna finish off with Ari. Like, you're no longer in it. So what was it like for you? And then after this, we're gonna move to some Q&A.
So early on in my career, I did get to travel quite a bit. You know, similar to to Teresa and Joe, we traveled when we needed to. It wasn't a Monday to Thursday type of travel schedule. Although, you know, there could be times when, you know, you have a client meeting and, you know, it could last 2, 3, 4 days, you know, but that doesn't happen all the time. You know, I've traveled to London and different parts of Europe, and I've had those opportunities. So when that happens, that's, you know, a longer travel schedule. But I actually, you know, traveling for, you know, 1 or 2 nights here and there is actually really nice, because you get a little bit of a break. You know, Teresa's smiling. I have 4 kids. You know, 2 of them are twins. You know, they're 4-year-olds, and we're busy. So, you know, having a night in a hotel is, you know, it's okay. And also seeing different cities. You know, going to San Francisco and going to Chicago. Those are amazing cities that, you know, should be definitely be taken advantage of. I, you know, also in, you know, when I was working at Strativity, I had the opportunity, you know, also a difference between boutique versus large is I had the opportunities to create different programs for our clients. And I created a program at the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta, running workshops at Porsche, and then doing the driving race cars around the racetrack, and then also doing the same thing at Dallas, running workshops there, and having an experience. So there, you know, the travel comes in different forms, and when you're lucky, you're lucky. And, you know, instead of, you know, going to Des Moines, Iowa for, you know, a couple nights to see an insurance client, you might have, you know, a good time every once in a while. But I would also say get it in when you're young, because, you know, eventually, you know, God willing, everyone will get married and have kids if they want. And then it gets busy. And then, you know, things are a little bit unpredictable, and you don't necessarily want to, you know, miss your son or daughter's, you know, play or, you know, presentation or everything else like that. You want to be there for those moments.
Thank you for your perspective. So we have people who are actually doing consulting work, who have been in the consulting field. If you want to ask questions about their unique practice, the place where they work, or if you want to ask Namaan about your peer institutions, what are college students doing across the country? What are the trends right now? You know, sometimes it helps to normalize things like, am I the only student that feels this way? So please open up your questions, put up your hand. This is incredibly informal, and we'd love to hear from you. Yeah, Rachel.
Hi, I was going to raise my hand before you were done talking. Hi, my name is Rachel. I want to thank you guys for coming, number one. Thank you so much for speaking to us. And my question is, I guess, mainly directed towards Mr. Mian or really anyone else. In terms of master's degrees, what's the trend, so to say? How important are they before you start work? Is it normal to go back to school and get one? What's sort of the deal there with master's degrees?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Rachel. And I'm going to speak from a broad industry-wide perspective, and I'll let anybody else fill in for, you know, their specific firms. But a master's degree is certainly not required to break into consulting. And, you know, for a non-MBA master's degree, like a specialized master's degree, your entry level at most firms is the same as an undergraduate. And so there's not a whole lot of differentiation that happens from just that master's degree if you don't have work experience. So I would not recommend going to school for that specific master's degree just to break into consulting. Now, there are other reasons to go do that, but it's not a requirement. And typically firms will, after you've been at the firm for a few years, if there's an advanced degree that you need, an MBA, a master's in data analytics, whatever the case may be, depending on the practice area you're in and your role, sponsorship programs are available at most firms. But the short answer to your question is, if you already have a master's, there's opportunity for you. And if you don't have a master's, but you're thinking about going to get one because you think that's going to help you break into consulting, that wouldn't be my first move.
Okay,
All
great.
right, thank you, Rachel, for asking the question. Next question. You can put them in the chat too, if you'd rather put your questions into the chat. Yes, Shmuel Adler, go ahead. Hi.
Yeah, thank you all so much again for coming tonight. So I know you spoke about it a little before, and I guess this goes to anyone because you all have sort of had this experience hiring new employees. What's the top thing someone from a non-target school could do to break into any of these companies?
Any takers on this one?
I'll give two ideas.
Okay.
So one is the broader your search, the more likely you are to get a bite. So if you go fishing and you only go fishing in one little hole, your odds are whatever. If you go fishing and you could somehow set up fishing rods in 10 holes, you have 10x the chance of getting a bite. So if you're dead set on, I'm gonna work in New York City and I'm gonna live in the Upper West Side and work for a firm that's based in Midtown, there are a lot of firms like that. Your hole's only so big. If you're willing to consider opportunities, maybe in New Jersey or Connecticut or Chicago, the more open-minded you are about, then that just increases your chance of getting a bite. And I can't overemphasize the importance of like getting off on the right foot. So if you land at a good firm, which doesn't necessarily mean a big firm, but you get the right job in any city, within a matter of months, or certainly within 18 months, you're highly marketable and you're perhaps set for the rest of your career. But sometimes it's breaking into that first job is what you need to get off on the right foot. And is it a sacrifice to maybe work in Hartford instead of New York City? Perhaps. But if 18 months of a lousy commute or maybe living in a smaller community is what it takes to have a 40-year successful career, I would argue that that's a good trade. The second piece of advice I'd give, and we talked about it before, but it's really so important, is when you get that introduction, whether it's to Dan or to whomever, that's like a golden opportunity. And that conversation you have counts more to your landing a job than whether your GPA is 4.0 or 3.2. And for that matter, whether you went to a community college or you went to Wharton, once you're having that conversation, that impression you make trumps all of that. And so if you go into the conversation with some open-ended questions around, so tell me what you do, or if the person says, why are you interested in, I'll ask why you're interested in health consulting. And you might say, I don't know, I'm trying to find out about health consulting, right? That's a tremendously terrible squandered opportunity. I've interviewed people over the years where it's clear they've prepared 10 plus hours for the conversation. You might call that crazy, but those people, their hit rates on getting offers is exponentially higher than someone that just prepares for 30 or 60 minutes. And what I've told many people is if you'll study for 20 hours for a history final so you get an A instead of an A-, why wouldn't you prepare 10 hours for a conversation that'll help you land a job that otherwise you might not get?
I am so glad you just made that reference to the studying for the history test, because when we all spoke earlier, I couldn't remember who said that, but it's been sticking in my mind. Before we go on to our next question, I want to ask Namaan, you work with so many students. Would you be okay with putting your LinkedIn URL into the chat, and then students can follow up if they have any recruiting type questions for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing, thank you. Any other questions here? This is the time. I'd also like to say, William, one sec. As far as like, what's a boutique? What's a big firm? A lot of you are like, I don't know. I know McKinsey and Mercer and Accenture, and that's about it. So at the Career Center, we can help you with that too. So if you want to like build up a list of like your boutique firms, who you know there, the larger firms, who you know there, please make an appointment with us. William, yes, what's your question?
So just to reiterate what my colleagues have said again, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to speak with us tonight. My question is that it seems that obviously the work life is demanding when it comes to a career in consulting, but there seems to be this common theme of like, establishing a network and kind of building your way around the company or creating exit opportunities for yourself. My question is, do you ever find it difficult as a consultant to balance that or as a younger consultant to balance that, looking towards the future and trying to break into other fields and trying to exit in a positive way and also focusing on your task at hand?
I'll take that one from an Accenture perspective, because I think it's different working at a boutique and then working at a bigger firm. When you're working at a company like Accenture, from the minute you walk into the room, you start interviewing for another job. And I don't mean interviewing for another job in another company. I'm saying that when you work at a company like Accenture, you're going to have to get placed on your projects. So maybe the first project they're going to try and get you staffed to themselves because they want to make that an easier transition. But once that first project ends, your career and your path at Accenture is up to you to define. So that means it's up to you to figure out what do I want to do next? Do I want to go into customers and and focus on that practice, the one that focuses on customer and channels? Do I want to go into finance and go into that practice? Do I want to go into learn about the travel industry? Do I want to learn about become an innovation expert? Do I want to go and the world is your oyster at a company like Accenture, because literally with 550,000 people, you could do any job you want, you could get it at Accenture, and that's my perspective. So it's really up to you to figure out for yourself what is it that you want to do, and how do you want to pivot into that next job within your Accenture world. I always say there's two different types of people that go to Accenture. There's the people who want to get a job and stay there for the rest of their life. They like the structure. They like trying different projects. They like the growth and the opportunities within that, kind of pyramid structure where you continue to rise and go to the next level and next level. And if not, if you can't make it to the next level, then you're going to get fired, right? Some people like that. And it's, a lot of people strive off of that kind of culture, which is honestly, it is sometimes that kind of culture in these bigger companies. But then also you have the type of culture where someone wants to work for 2 years, get a lot of great experiences under their belt, and then go somewhere else. The challenge that you'll face is that sometimes, and especially now during COVID, like a lot of our analysts are on projects at Accenture where they weren't necessarily aligned to their personal objectives. So you are placed on a project because you are a resource, because you are billable. So as much as you might not be happy on the project, you need to do that because that's your job. And that's something that you just need to be aware of is knowing that, to some degree, you might be placed in those types of situations, but it's up to you then to figure out how do you want to raise your voice and to navigate your career in a different direction within the company.
I just want to add to what Donnie said, especially at a big firm like Accenture, is that when you walk into a firm like that, you are networking on day one. And Donnie alluded to this, briefly. And we're not talking about networking externally. We're talking about networking internally. So if you're at an event, any type of event, and there are, people there who can potentially get you onto your next project, and you feel like you're much more of an introvert than an extrovert, you need to, get those steroids out and become that Superman or Superwoman and just go up to them and start talking and building relationships, because that's the only way to start moving forward in a place like Accenture or even McKinsey or any of some of the big firms.
Can I just give the HR firm perspective on that? Thanks. And Joe, you'll back me up. Okay, your job when you first start working anywhere in consulting is to do really good work. If you do really good work and work really hard and anticipate things so people don't have to tell you every little detail instruction, and you demonstrate that you can take learnings and quickly apply them to the next situation, people will see that you're doing a good job. They will want you on their project. I can't speak to the culture outside of the HR consulting world, because that's all I've been in, but we want all of our resources to be billable. We want everybody fully staffed, fully engaged, fully learning, fully gaining something from the work that they're doing. And so we will help you. If you want to try something that it hasn't landed in your lap yet, tell your manager. They'll try to help you get staffed on that type of project. But the most important thing you can do is just do a really good job. And that will open doors for you, whether you're an extrovert or not.
And I agree with you 100%. And I would say like that to me is the given, is that you have to do a good job because your work product stands for yourself. But at a company like Accenture, I could say the difference is your work product is great, right? That's a given. The question is like, who are you going to know that's going to get you to the next place is the challenge. And you could be doing the greatest work, but if you're challenged with how do you, maybe your manager won't be empowered to try and do that because they're lazy, right? The question is, how do you work with those types of situations? And you unfortunately see those a lot more in the bigger firms because these places are huge and it's easy to get lost.
I'd add that we spent a lot of time talking about how do you make yourself marketable? How do you get that first conversation? And as a college student, that's certainly what's top of mind. If you've landed a good consulting role where you're getting good experience, then the paradigm changes very quickly. It's going to be recruiters are going to be figuring out how could I get time on William's calendar, because because consultants have a fantastic reputation in the job market in terms of the skills they've built, the knowledge, the expertise, the way they work, their work ethic, their interpersonal skills. So if you have a couple of years of experience at a reputable consulting firm, you're going to get bombarded on LinkedIn, whether it's from corporate, whether it's from some of the industries you've been in, whether it's other consulting firms, insurance companies. You become highly marketable. And that's to my point earlier, sometimes maybe it takes a little bit of investment, whether it's a geographic inconvenience or otherwise, but you very quickly flip the script and now you're the desired commodity.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Who wants to go next? 2 lucky students. All right, well, perhaps you don't have any questions because we learned so much tonight. I don't know if you could notice, but I was taking notes the entire evening. So this has been incredibly beneficial, and it's just great to have a group of professionals like this together. I hope you all enjoyed being here tonight. And can you just give a little thumbs up for our panelists tonight? Thank you very much for joining us. You know, you're all really amazing people. It's no surprise that, you know, you're so good at what you do and so valued. So please continue to stay safe. Please come to the Career Center for any follow-up. Join YU MVP. Start doing those practice mock interviews, and start thinking about the summer and what opportunity is really going to shine on your resume, and we can help you get there. All right, so everyone have a nice evening. I don't have to say get home safely, but enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.